How's it going, folks? So, I just got through watching Jinx's video on how social media can kill a conversation. Now, I gotta say that I don't know why I didn't see it in my feed. It didn't appear to come up in my feed, so I'm a little Johnny come lately to this by what it looks like maybe about a week. But I want to discuss this because Jinx brings up a lot of very pertinent points. And I know he and I have had discussions, and one of the things that we've discussed is that there are some right leaning individuals, I guess, either they don't understand what he's saying or maybe that ideologically disagree on at least certain things. However, I don't think that it's necessarily the best idea for us to be storming out on each other just specifically because maybe there's a slight disagreement or a slight roadblock. With me, conversation killers would be things like being intentionally dishonest, being intentionally stupid, refusing to be logically consistent, refusing to try to actually listen to what the other person's saying or misrepresenting what the other person's saying, so on and so forth. Look, we're at a point with our country right now where there is certain problems that do need to be addressed. And I will be right back. One of those problems is that we are losing a good portion of our freedom. Now, certain areas we might be gaining some freedom, but a lot of areas we're actually losing our freedom. And it's not just our physical freedom, it's stuff like our economic freedom. You know, with that being said, who here on the right doesn't think we lost a lot of freedom starting a certain month in 2020, and we're still trying to get some of that back? Does anyone think that maybe certain Congress creatures had some interest in certain corporations that would have benefited from it? Like maybe they might own some stock or have some friends in those corporations that benefited from the measures that were put in place in 2020. Come on, we're seeing this right now. I mean, Jinx brings up some good points about corporations that we seem, well, maybe not have a blind spot to, but maybe we need to be working to try a little harder to try to see if we can't come up with a countermeasure to what they're doing. I, you know, I know that our common answer tends to be, well, let's let the free market sort it out. However, how many people are creatures of habit? And even though they notice some corporation engaging in unethical behavior, they still go and do business with that corporation. Come on. And, even those of us who claim to be right leaning, claim to be in favor of free market, will easily make an excuse for somebody who continues to do business with somebody who just absolutely spits on us while saying, well, there's no other way. So, yeah, there is certain things that have to change. And I understand that we're a little bit leery a lot of the times on government regulation. And I understand for good reason. We've seen what's come out of Congress. These bills that look like they're encyclopedias, which don't do what they're promised, and in fact do the opposite of what they're promised at many times. So I understand the concern on that one. I left a comment on Jinx's video, and in that comment, I detail certain ways that we can deal with it. There is a constitutionality concern. I think there are ways we can definitely stay within the Constitution and still do this, you know, and still make certain regulations that apply primarily to these multinational corporations. Because I don't know if you've realized that some of these multinational corporations have gotten to the point where they have this little God complex, or where they think they're a government in and of themselves. It wouldn't surprise me, to see some of these CEOs saying, well, their corporation demands a seat at the UN in another 5, 10 years. I mean, and honestly, do any of you want corporations running your life any more than you want the government or some bossy asshole down the road running your life? I don't. So, yeah, we do need to come together and figure out a solution on this one. And the good thing is we have people like Jinx, who is an honest person. They try to be they're logically consistent. They try to learn. They try to hear us out. And we need to be doing the same with them. Come on, we're supposed to be a freedom loving group of people. We're supposed to be rational. Now, the people in DC, don't matter what their party line is, seem to have no problem getting together with the corporations, some of these corporations anyway, and coming together and making all sorts of deals that benefit them and fuck us over at the same time. So I don't know why it is that some people who are, like me, more right-leaning, can't move together with people who are more left-leaning, I should say, coalesce, and let's figure out some countermeasures. I mean, this is our only chance to preserve what freedom we have left and even possibly take some ground back. And Jinx is right to a degree. There are certain talking heads on social media and in the legacy media that do sit there and use political issues or talking points to keep people like those of us who are more right-leaning libertarian, ANCAP, and people of those natures from dealing with the more socially liberal, types who are intellectually honest and who want our own individual freedoms. We want our economic opportunities as well. We don't want to see our lives be destroyed by either big government or big corporations. If we work together, we have a chance to at least put a stop on some of this, If we don't, we'll probably hang separately, but still nonetheless, we'll hang, proverbially speaking, obviously. So, further continuing this on, I know that many of us who are pro 2A remember and still understand that there are certain banks that won't actually bank for FFLs unless these FFLs follow some of their ridiculous rules. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't think these FFLs have the time, resources, or money to also create their own banking system. We know this. What happens when more of these anti-freedom types get into positions to where they can make decisions for even more of these banks? And they decide to all collude together and just stop banking with FFLs altogether, or make FFLs follow their specific rules. Well, it's not going to be good for any of us, because I've seen some of these rules that some of these banks have in place. Well, Texas, my home state, we took an approach to this that, well, involves regulation. Our state stated, okay, fine. You guys want to be a private business and have your own rules and decide that you want to create these rules that these FFLs have to follow. Well, then you could be a private business and not have any of the municipal bond contracts, so to speak. That's a pretty serious chunk of change right there that these banks would make dealing with these. Nonetheless, Texas passed this regulation. So guess what? Banks like JP Morgan are not going to be getting into any of that municipal bond money anymore. None of us complained about that. In fact, many of us on the gun rights side said, you know what? Yeah, that bank needs that. Those banks need to feel that pinch. And I think, some of these basic rules can be made for multinational corporations. Furthermore, let me ask you this. Somebody breaks your arm. You would expect them to, probably get charged with the appropriate charges and possibly even take them to court to pay your bills. Well, why shouldn't the corporations be held to the same standards? There are plenty of instances where various corporations, namely insurance companies, will either not pay the full amount that they're due, that they promised to cover, or they won't pay at all, and there's no way to recoup that money, even though you kept up your end of the bargain and paid those insurance fees. They're now backing out of their end of the bargain. Well, that doesn't sound very right to me. And I think this is some of the stuff that Jink is talking about. In fact, it is some of the stuff that Jink is talking about. I have a friend. Right now, I have one of his rifles as collateral, and loaning him some money. The reason why this is, and he offered the rifle as collateral, is because he was out of work for a couple of months because he was in the fucking hospital. Now, he has tried to get temporary disability for that time. He's been unsuccessful for it, with it. Now, I know none of us are very fond of the social safety nets. However, these systems are in place, and he's worked his whole life and put money into these social safety nets his whole life. Him, of all people, should be able to get that temporary disability, yet somehow they're not giving him what he was promised. I understand this makes a case to why we shouldn't rely on these social safety nets. However, there is a problem there because the money was taken from him, and the very least, they should give him at least the temporary disability he applied for. Unfortunately, that's not happening. So I think there is certain things we can do on this, seeing the fact that we already have some of these social safety nets in place. At least expect them to keep their end of the bargain on this. And I understand that there are people that scam the system. I don't like it any more than y'all do. And quite frankly, I think that those people who do scam the system should face prison time. And quite frankly, I think those social safety nets need to be taken out of the hands of the federal government and probably shouldn't even be put in the hands of the state government. They should be done maybe at county level. But we do need to figure something out that is a just in case somebody gets seriously injured at work or something like that. Because, getting seriously injured at work, you can't go to work, you can't earn a paycheck. What do you do? you know. And granted, you could say, okay, well, save up your money. Okay, what if you just started that job? You know, so that is a big thing we need to think about right there. I mean, and even then, sometimes things come up and people can't always pay the bills. And I understand that we do, and we have, many of us, seen people who make excuses or even lie about their situation just so they can get money for not working. But that's not everybody. And I understand that there are going to be some disingenuous leftists that are going to pretend that that's not the case because their specific study, which didn't even attempt to measure any of this, supposedly said that this stuff doesn't exist. Yeah, so I'm somewhat familiar with some of the tactics that some of these disingenuous leftists do. However, you have people who are left leaning like Jinx who aren't engaged in these tactics and do make an effort to be honest and at least discuss what's going on. Furthermore, there was a guy that Jinx talked about, and in this conversation with the guy didn't seem to understand that unions are actually a First Amendment protected right. Which I got to say, dude, did you not read the Bill of Rights? First off, yeah, the right to peacefully assemble is within the Constitution. Now, I understand our concern with unions monopolizing the labor force, much like certain corporations attempt to monopolize the market or create a virtual monopoly through collusion. So, I mean, unions are not government officials, and yet we seem to be acting as if they are, but yet give that exemption corporations who engage in the exact same behavior as some of these corrupt unions. So, I mean, again, there's got to be somewhere we can come and meet and push back against this together. Because honestly, we do need more people on the side of freedom, of liberty, of having a prosperous economy. Excuse me. You know, trust me, freedom is a lot better when people have more economic opportunities, and they are able to at least be able to make themselves better off, without being pushed down by asshole government officials, by corporations that realize by keeping people down that they can control them and get cheap labor. Um, so I don't see what the big deal is with us talking with the people who are more left leaning, who share some of our same values, and who want to be honest about this, who want to be logically consistent. I just don't. So I'm going to cut it off right here because I know the video is getting a little longer than I usually run. And that being said, y'all take her easy out there. Have a great day. You guys have the comments. So